Hello and welcome to this edition of Nation Building. On this program, we examine the political, social, and moral issues in leadership. And on our program today, we are pleased to have former Senator and the Chairman of the Free National Movement, Mr. Darren Cash. When we come back from the break, we'll introduce Mr. Cash to you.
Time is money, and when you need more of both, fly Western Air. 12 flights daily between Nassau and Freeport. At Western Air, your 11th round trip is always free. Flights to Marsh Harbor coming soon.
You bring passion, and we bring world-class infrastructure and innovation that's designed to help your business grow. You have determination. We've got your back with a super-fast LTE network, giving you access to whatever you need, when you need it. You offer superior service. We put you in control, with a dedicated care team to look after your business 24/7. Together, we have the advantage. Alive. Let's do this.
Hello, I'm Wendell Jones, and every time I sit down and I watch JCN television, I drink the Jamaica Bahama fruit juice. It's so pleasing to the palate.
I've been cooking Bahamian dishes for generations. I now use Jamaica Bahama product. The rice is very fluffy, very tasty, and good eating. Jamaica Bahama product is simply the best.
As an insurance agent, my life is go, go, go. But whenever I need a refreshing break, it's Jamaica Bahamas Island Mixed Fruit Drink. Good.
Hi, I'm Debbie Bartlett from GEMS 105.9 FM. The effect that Island Junkanoo Juice Medley has on me is exhilarating.
Welcome back to Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock. And as mentioned earlier, we're pleased to have Mr. Darren Cash, who was the chairman of the Free National Movement not so long ago and also served between 1997 and 2002 as a senator under the Ingram Free National Movement. Mr. Cash, welcome to Nation Building.
Thank you very much, Winston. It is my pleasure to be with you.
And thank you for coming and taking time out. Mr. Cash, we are in election mode. And of course, like many others, I see that you have decided to take, I would call it a break. I'm putting it in my terms. You're still a young man, and so I don't think that the country has seen all that you've had to offer by way of service. So you can correct me. But I think you're on a sabbatical from active politics. But you're here today because you have made a contribution, a significant contribution, and you've had a lot to say, constructive things to say about not just your party, but also the development of the country. And you've also, interestingly enough, you've also been bold enough to critique your own party, and this hadn't started recently. You've had a long track record of that. So I find you to be a balanced person as far as your critiquing of Bahamian politics, to put it broadly. Before we get into some of your political experience, though, and some of the things that you contributed to our country, wanted to talk a little about your history, and if you can share with our viewing audience where you were born and your foundation.
Yeah. Thank you again for having me. And as far as the history is concerned, it is, I think I can put it fairly succinctly in saying it's a brief history. I'm fundamentally an island boy. I am, in a lot of ways, the product of typical Bahamian society today. I was born to Cleo Cash, and my father never married, but I came to know my father in later years, and that was a great bond. But when I was a young child, I had the tremendous opportunity of spending my formative years in Mangrove Key Andros, and so I spent the first few years there before coming to attend school at Ryan McPhee Primary School in its heyday as one of the great air-conditioned schools in New Providence. The Family Island years really shaped me, and it gave me a great appreciation.
Sorry, what year was, if you can share, what year was, or what age rather were you when you
shortly after birth, my grandmother raised me for a few years. Put it this way, I started Ryan McPhee at age 5. Those early years, and of course, like many of us, every summer, another break we were back to the island.
So it's pretty much like you grew up there in many sense.
Absolutely, and I had the benefit of aunts, uncles, and grandmother who were all very instrumental.
Old-fashioned values,
like you say, child of old people, right? So after I McPhee, one of the tremendous blessings I got in life was that my mother decided to do for me, and she ultimately did for all my siblings, make the sacrifice of giving me a St. Augustine's education, and that to me was one of the most outstanding parts of me defining who I was, because while at St. Augustine's, in addition to the great traditional SAC education, I had the opportunity to get involved in the Kiwanis-sponsored youth movement. And it instilled in me a tremendous passion for service, just doing things for other people. And once that started, I carried that through the rest of my life, because a significant part of what Kiwanis tries to instill is this passion for service above self. And so the natural extension from that was getting involved in public service. So the commitment to service, the experience of being raised by a single parent and having a larger family was what really defined who I was, and helped me grounded throughout my life, because there was always a constant reminder that whatever we achieve as individuals is not a function of who we are. It is about the tremendous outpouring of love and attention and commitment from many other people, family members, friends, a support group as well.
Was there any particular person in your family that kept you straight? Strong-willed young man. Who really was responsible for?
Listen, my mother, I've said every opportunity I get, was really the most instrumental force, because it was a matter of leadership by example. And she, of course, was at the age where once you get to a certain point, you leave school and you start working. But the tremendous work ethic, the tremendous focus, discipline, willingness to make sacrifices, I learned that from her. And of course, she was at the age where she couldn't sit down and help me with the physics and the math, but that commitment to inside, get to your books, use your time productively was invaluable. But again, I said, it was a family thing, because I had the tremendous opportunity of being surrounded by aunts and uncles and a grandmother who played a very significant role in shaping me.
Interesting. I have talked to a number of young men, leaders like the Zhivago Langs and Michael Pintard and others who had similar background, upbringing. I myself being the product of a single parent home, even though my parents were married, but they were separated for almost all of my upbringing. And mothers played such a tremendous role in shaping our lives. And I pause there because to interject this point, today in our society in the Bahamas, there is a cry with all the crime and all the other social ills that we're suffering with, that one of the primary reasons for that is because of fatherless homes. And so I simply put a question to you, is that necessarily true when there's so many examples of young men and women who, especially men, who have been raised by single mothers that seem to, the crop of leaders out from society, if you trace it, is loaded with people and young men who did not have the benefit of having fathers in their home?
Yeah. It is true to a degree, and you know, the thing about public life, particularly when you get into the realm of public policy, there's a level of responsibility and a level of accountability where one size does not fit all. Solutions are nuanced, that you have to really pay attention to the details. So the broad statement that single-parent family is a significant contributing force to the ills in society is correct only to a degree. You have to look more broadly, because I could use my own life experience as an example, where the fact that your parents may not have been together does not necessarily mean that it's all downhill, that the availability of a support group is significant and very important. But at the same time, the involvement of society, I talked about Kiwanis being an opportunity for people both from single-parent family and from traditional families coming together to make a difference for other people is extremely important. And so whatever deficiency you had on an individual level is compensated for with the kind of support and exposure you get once you leave the home and go into different communities. The other part of that I think is important to underscore is, and it happened certainly in my instance, my father was Ben Stewart, who spent many of his years in Grand Bahama, but made a significant contribution in that community. He has a phenomenal family, and I've come to know them very well. And so even though that nuclear family is not together, people are still making a difference. The key is that where people don't have that kind of support, there is a responsibility for the rest of society to actually get involved and to make a difference. My mom was a very significant player in keeping me and my siblings focused. Where people aren't getting that, there is an opportunity for the community to step forward and actually fill that void. And that, I think, is a significant part of what's missing in some of the challenges we're seeing today. And because we don't tend to be root cause focused, people tend to operate only at the high level, superficial level, as opposed to really going deeply. And when you don't make an investment to solve some of the problems, they are compounded over many years to the point where what you find is more rhetoric and less real focus on problem solving.
While we talk about that, what is your thoughts on the concept of national service, not national youth service? It was something that's been around for a while. I remember comments yourself making way back in the early 90s. But what is your thoughts about the concept of national youth service, and would that make a significant difference? And so,
I'm a strong supporter of national youth service, because whether it is a structured program that the government of the day administers, or whether it is something that is done by a church community or a civic group, the concept is the same. That people getting engaged in structured activities designed to accomplish some positive output, not necessarily for themselves, but for other people. And it becomes necessary from a government standpoint, or for government's involvement, when the level of engagement that's necessary isn't taking place, or where the manifestations of disengaged young people or older people is such where you have to find a means to channel that energy. And so I'm a strong supporter, even to this day, of us being prepared to find a way to get people engaged in making positive contributions within their communities. And if it is done, one, it becomes easier for people to understand that if I'm a 7, 8, 10, 12-year-old in my community, there's no advantage in knocking down street signs. There's no advantage in destroying my neighbor's property or the school's property, because that's fundamentally mine. And being engaged in community service helps to really ingrain that attitude that this isn't their things, these are our things, and I have a personal responsibility to be involved in taking care of it.
Why do you think governments in the past have failed to come up with a workable formula?
I think a part of it is just a lack of courage, in the sense that lack of courage and lack of political maturity. Let me put the two of them together. Courage in the sense that if national service and doing for other people and making a difference for someone else and putting your own circumstances on the back burner for the moment, whether it's a year or 6 months or 6 weeks, if that's not a routine part of how you have been raised, then, and you get comfortably into your thing, I gotta go to work, come home, go have fun, it's tough to break that cycle and then impose on you the idea that you need to spend 15, 20 hours doing something structured for somebody else. And when the government gets to the point where it sees disengaged young people suggest that we have to do something like this, the political answer is easier to say, as it was at the time. You're trying to conscript people, or you're trying to form an army, or you're trying to create work, whatever the political easy answer might be. And so if it's not a part of your makeup, and if the folks on the other side aren't sufficiently prepared to say, let's do this together because it has potential for strong positive contributions, and we're not going to politicize it, then that makes it even more difficult for you to go ahead and do it. But I think where we are today as a society, the country, just as an example, would be, in my opinion, phenomenally better off if we were to invest precious dollars in national youth service, training and development, preparing people for future opportunities. You'd see almost immediate returns on those kinds of investments, as opposed to some of the other things that a government might invest money in.
We're going to take you a little further along those thoughts when we come back from the break. You're watching Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock, and we'll be right back after this break.
Time is money, and when you need more of both, fly Western Air. 12 flights daily between Nassau and Freeport. At Western Air, your 11th round trip is always free. Flights to Marsh Harbor coming soon.
Alive knows what you do today will determine the success of your tomorrow. So we've invested in world-class infrastructure and innovation so every business in the Bahamas can grow. Like our online business account that lets you manage all your business mobiles simply and efficiently through one portal. From adding users and numbers to drilling down where you can view details of individual data, calls, and texts, to providing an immediate overview of usage month on month. We put you in control. Our people are here to help your business grow. Our relationship managers take the time to understand your business. And with our care team and our Alive stores, we are there to support your business needs. So let's work together, Bahamas. Let's grow together. Let us be part of your team. Let's do this.
Who said you can't get great quality products at an affordable price? If you want the best quality food products at the most affordable prices, you must pick up the Jamaica Bahama brand of fine quality products at your favorite food store. Products like Jamaica Bahama Coconut Water, the most healthy and refreshing drink on the market. Jamaica Bahama Fruit Punch, the only fruit punch in the Bahamas made from real fruit. Jamaica Bahama Coconut Milk, green pigeon peas with coconut milk, condensed milk, kidney beans with coconut milk, corned beef, green pigeon peas, mackerel, and corn. Jamaica Bahama's fine line of products is available at all your favorite food stores and convenience stores nationwide. Telephone 351-8282 in Freeport and 341-4091 in Nassau.
I don't wanna win. No, no, I don't wanna win.
It's a new day. This is our new day. And in the blue glow of the morning, there's still time to reach back into our dreams. To become dreamers in the daylight. And live our lives and hopes with open eyes. Yes, this is the day to do the things that will fill our lives with joy and with love. Dreamers in the daylight. Anything is possible. This is our new day. We are alive.
Welcome back to Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock, and I'm here today with the former senator and former chairman of the Free National Movement, Mr. Darren Cash. Mr. Cash, when you talked about or began to share about National Youth Service, I want to make sure our viewers are clear. Said a number of substantive points, but I want you to make clear. In 1990, somewhere between 90 and 92, Sir Lyndon Pinlin, our former Prime Minister and the father of our nation, brought out a form of an idea, raised an idea in Parliament, and went down the path of proceeding to develop a National Youth Service. And I believe, certainly if they had won the 92 election, it would have been brought about. Now, the Free National Movement, your party, at the time, was opposed to that, and it became a major issue in the 92 election campaign. It was said then that it was Pinlin's army. What was so wrong with national service now? Because now we're hearing people saying, if it was done, our society would have been better. So bring some clarity to what you're sharing about your support for it, and were you supportive of what Sir Lyndon offered then?
I smiled because, you know, there's a little bit of this today, but when it gets to the point where you've been in office for almost 25 years and you've got a laundry list of issues working against you, in part because there's a perception that you've outlived your usefulness, quote unquote, it is almost as if nothing that you say, however valuable, however prudent, will resonate with people. And for me, the value of whatever element Mr. Pinling wanted to bring National Youth Service may have gotten lost in the shuffle of it really was time for a change in government. Fast forward to today. But even if I take a moment on Sir Lyndon's vision, for me, it is not the same for the Bahamas to talk about a National Youth Service that has a paramilitary focus in the same way a United States or in Israel, for example, countries where they're constantly at fear of an invading force. Now, if you put this in the Bahamian context, what's our great opportunity? Not necessarily that we need to prepare people for a potential invasion. We need to engage able-bodied, high-energy people for whom a job opportunity is not available immediately, but engage them in a way that helps to continue their process of learning or gives us an opportunity to supplement the academic skill that they didn't get in high school when they left 6 months or 12 months ago, and to prepare them for opportunities that may be available. And so rather than hanging out and not being productive, national service falls closer to the model that Prime Minister Ingram at the time was seeking to do just before the 2012 election, I think it was, when the Volunteer Bahamas program was brought to the fore, where the idea was for people to register to do community service in one way, shape, or form, not in the Defense Force or anything of that nature, but in their communities. And so it is that kind of service that one builds skills, that helps you to provide true urban renewal opportunities and make a difference for people who need their roofs and other things fixed or tutoring, whatever it is.
And I've heard many of our citizens make the point of view that if without a mandatory requirement, national service simply wouldn't work, wouldn't be effective. That there has to be. Yes, I hear you on it seems unnecessary for there to be any military training aspect of it, but without having a form of mandatory requirement for young people, I'm not sure, and certainly this is a sentiment I've gotten also, I share that view, that I'm not sure that you'll have captured the people, the target audience,
right.
if you will, the people that you want to.
Well, I'm not arguing against a mandatory component at all.
Okay.
In fact, I'm just saying that if it's mandatory, it just doesn't have to be paramilitary.
Right.
Because to the extent that able-bodied persons can't find work and ought to be engaged, whatever we invest in that level of engagement pays value to the country
later
down the road. To the extent that you do have able-bodied people who are working, making a contribution, to the extent that they are required to make some contribution in the lives of those who don't have opportunities, again, just says to us, we're all a part of one community that has needs, and we have an opportunity to use our talents to make a positive contribution, and your country needs you to do that. And so I think we are at a stage where we need to be creative, we need to try new models to make things happen, and if it upsets the apple cart to some degree, then so be it, because nation building isn't only about doing that which is convenient.
No. Absolutely. Let's talk a little about further the journey of your, what brought about this passion on your part to, you talked about your early days, your mother, Kiwanis, I believe. What is it, though, that cemented the desire in your heart for national service in the country?
Again, and I want to draw a distinction between just engagement. I mean, like I said, we were in Kiwanis-sponsored youth, and so at the high school level, at the college level, did a lot of work at that. And I think the key for a lot of people is once you get out of college, once you get out of high school, how do you make a difference? And for me, I was involved I was of a view that politics did not have to be the vehicle, because the easy answer is for people to say you ought to be in politics. So I just tried to be a good citizen. I was in the Bahamas JCs when it was thriving, again, making a difference in the community. We were involved in apolitical groups such as the Bahamian Interest Forum. People don't remember some of those, but we were the ones marching on Bay Street to promote and demonstrating in front of the OAS to promote private broadcasting outside of the hands of government. So those were the kinds of levels of engagement that we had, and frequent writer to the newspapers, and I was
letters to the editor.
Exactly, and unlike some people we know today who are on the payroll for political persons but give the appearance of trying to be impartial, I was an equal opportunity critic. I gave it to the FNM, I gave it to the PLP. But there was a point where you just made the determination that, and Fred Mitchell, who was a supporter of these kinds of non-political groupings, used to often remind us that, listen, you need to get involved in politics. You have to engage at that level. And, you know, a lot of us resisted. But there came a point where you made a determination that to affect change on the level that it is necessary, that you have to
sit at the table.
It is helpful to be involved in government because the scope of your impact can be that much greater.
Specifically, if you can recall, I know you were at then COB. People like yourself, like Shivago Lang, Michael Pintard, and if I'm not mistaken, there was some, I wouldn't say rivalry, but you guys ran for the same office to be college. What was it?
No, actually, you know, I succeeded Shivago Lang. He was president, and I succeeded him. He's president of the College of the Bahamas Union of Students, and I succeeded him. Interestingly enough, when we came to COB, Michael Pintard was involved in COBUS at the time, and he was encouraging all the rest of us to get involved.
So Michael was the forerunner of the trio.
He was very much a forerunner, and in fact, you know, talk about leadership by example. Michael was doing his one-man demonstrations on Parliament, in front of Parliament, while we were students at COB. So again, there was that sense that this is the model for activism, of engagement, where you put it on the line and you're prepared to be arrested. So we bought into a lot of that as well. And of course, COBUS was an opportunity for you to contribute within the then college setting, and at the same time sort of be a model for some of the younger student leaders.
On that note, is it not, I'm suggesting, is it not a tragedy that young men and women like yourselves, the Pinta, the Lang, yourselves and others, it seemed that was a unique generation at that time, special grouping of young people. And I focus primarily on the guys because that's the ones that I know. If there's any women that were involved in the movement, you can free to highlight that. But none of you that were seen as very, very bright, and still today, the average person would say that you are still bright prospects for the country. But none of you have had the privilege of, well, Lang has been a government minister, you're a senator, we're a senator, Michael also, have had the opportunity to be at a higher level of leadership. And I say that in this context. Sir Lyndon, at a very early age, had the opportunity to lead the Progressive Liberal Party. Young, bright men. There were many older men and women in that movement at the time, during the late 50s and early 60s, that were obviously forerunners, and they were the ones that went out and started the PLP and so on. And so, but the younger group were allowed to ascend to leadership. It seemed as if since that generation passed, we haven't had a generational shift in any of the political organizations, certainly not at the top. Speak to that.
Yeah. key part of it comes down to leadership itself. And in many respects, it means the person who is the leader. You go back to I think, the 87 elections when Sir Lyndon Pinling was really fighting to maintain his hold on the party. That was a good period within the PLP because Sir Lyndon brought in a lot of young people just around the time that all of his contemporaries were saying, we need to go. He said, fine, you go, I'm staying. But fortunately, he brought in a lot of young people and the face of the party changed to some degree. To his credit, within the FNM, I mean, Hubert Ingram was, par excellence when it comes to someone who had the strength, the courage of his convictions, the comfort within himself to really surround himself with a lot of contrarians. And you talk about myself and Chivago and Michael Pintard, but he also brought in the Tommy Turnquest and Carl Bettles and Dion Folks and so on, who were, at that time in '92, young Turks, started out as parliamentary secretaries. But the key is you had a leader who was prepared to say, I'm going to spend some political capital and bring in some of these contrarians to learn the ropes and in a lot of ways make a difference because you can see their passions. That has to be ongoing, and the vitality for a political organization is it cannot be a monolith of opinions, that within a political organization that has to change with time, otherwise it runs the risk of someone being able to say you are the same or you are the cause of all of our problems if the organization doesn't change with time, and that means change the people, change the leadership. You will have what you have today, which is a broad swath of Bahamians saying the FNM is no different from the PLP. Why? It's because the way in which an organization is evolving permits them to say that.
And many people would say, what you really allude to is a lack of a system that forces change, because the culture of our politics in the Bahamas is one that facilitates whoever is in power to remain in power, and that is leader of both government and opposition. You're watching Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Time is money, and when you need more of both, fly Western Air. 12 flights daily between Nassau and Freeport. At Western Air, your 11th round trip is always free. Flights to Marsh Harbor coming soon.
Hello, I'm Wendell Jones, and every time I sit down and I watch JCN television, I drink the Jamaica Bahama fruit juice. It's so pleasing to the palate.
I've been cooking Bahamian dishes for generations. I now use Jamaica Bahamas product. The rice is very fluffy, very tasty, and good eating. Jamaica Bahama product is simply the best.
As an insurance agent, my life is go, go, go. But whenever I need a refreshing break, it's Jamaica Bahamas Island Mixed Fruit Drink. Good.
Hi, I'm Debbie Bartlett from Gems 105.9 FM. The effect that Island Junkanoo Juice medley has on me is exhilarating.
It's a new day. This is our new day. And in the blue glow of the morning, there's still time to reach back into our dreams, to become dreamers in the daylight, and live our lives and hopes with open eyes. Yes, is the day to do the things that will fill our lives with joy and with love. Dreamers in the daylight, anything is possible. This is our new day. We are alive.
Are you a business person staying for a night, a week, or a month? Holding a meeting for your company or organization? A couple starting your married life with your wedding? Looking for vacation happiness on Grand Bahama Island? We know our happiness will make you happy. You'll see it in the smiles on the faces of our people. Our common goal at Pelican Bay Hotel is to anticipate what you need to be happy and to see that you get it. Visit our website to find everything you need to find happiness at Pelican Bay at Lucaya.
You bring passion, and we bring world-class infrastructure and innovation that's designed to help your business grow. You have determination. We've got your back with a super-fast LTE network, giving you access to whatever you need, when you need it. You offer superior service, we put you in control, with a dedicated care team to look after your business 24/7. Together, we have the advantage. Alive. Let's do this.
What if we told you, only 68 miles from North America, lied an island with communications and technological infrastructure unmatched in the Caribbean? What if we told you that this island has an abundance of skilled, educated professionals with English as a first language? Now, what if we told you that you can operate a call center or BPO facility with no taxes? You may think there's no way, but there is. Grand Bahama Island, where the once impossible is now possible.
Welcome back to Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock, and I'm here today with former Senator and former Chairman of the Free National Movement, Mr. Darren Cash. Mr. Cash, in this final segment, we're going to pack this in because you're a man with lots to say, and I know that our viewers will appreciate your thoughts on some of the current issues that are going on. And what I'd like to begin this segment by is asking you, you are aware of the apparent voter apathy that's going on in the country. Records suggest that never before, this close to, I guess, a general election, has there been such a low voter registration. Bahamians love politics. Bahamians love to vote. Politics is talked about right after church, right after everything we do at the dinner table. What is your thoughts as to what is the greatest factor affecting or impeding our people to register to vote and having this voter apathy? And secondly, what encouragement would you have to give to our people concerning their need to register and to participate in the process?
Yeah. I think in part and I do believe there's a degree of apathy. People like to talk about quote-unquote Bahamians being last minute. No, but I think if you look at the historical trend, the level of registration, even at this point,
just over 60%.
So there is a degree of, and apathy perhaps is the wrong word. I think disgust, discontent with the status quo. I know. I feel it. I feel it. I have experienced it myself. That an organization has to renew itself, but it has to renew itself in a way that inspires confidence, because it is out of a crucible of active debates about great ideas, about the direction of the country, that new leaders and new ideas will emerge. At this stage, the country ought to be engaged in tremendously intense debates about how we're going to transform the country. And the alternative to the government ought to be the organization that's leading that debate. They ought to be getting people excited about the strength and power, the uniqueness, the creativity of their ideas, and people ought to be buying in.
And you don't think that people are seeing that?
They're not seeing it. They're not seeing it. I think if they saw a renewed organization that conducted itself, that profiled itself in a way that says, yeah, they may be from this party that has been around forever and ever, but I can see in what they're doing, what they're putting forward, that it really is different. And I remind people, you know, George Washington was the only U.S. president who wasn't the leader of a political party. But Democrats and Republicans have been around for almost as long as the Republic, other than the time the Whigs were around to some degree. So you cannot just say they're Democrats and Republicans, or in the UK they're Liberals and Conservatives. Even with the injection of the Lib Dems, they're still those organizations that have been around since time immemorial. And what has been the difference? They have renewed themselves through the leadership, through the ideas that they put forward that capture people.
And in defense of your point, well, not of your point, but in defense of another view, some would argue that the Free National Movement has a new leader, has a significant slate of new candidates, many of them young, with lots of new, fresh ideas. Why would that not qualify as a renewal?
I'm going to answer that by repeating what I said, that at this stage there ought to be a tremendous debate about your ideas and what you're going to do that is different from the alternative. And that is, at this point, in my view, not happening. Now, and that is new faces notwithstanding. That is still something that is essential if the Free National Movement wants to distinguish themselves from the Free National Movement of old. People are not engaged because they don't feel and see different. They don't have that thing that really draws them to this new group, this new set of ideas, these viable policy alternatives. And so that's not happening, faces changing notwithstanding. The other part of it is, and I spoke to process, if in the process of renewing yourself you cut off an arm or you cut off a leg or you shoot yourself in the foot, you know, the jury will be out on whether that actually helps you, because politics is a business of addition, not subtraction. And so if in renewing yourself you've done so in a way that fractures your organization or sends people who have been nothing but supporters of yours asunder, then that really calls into question whether your approach is the right approach. But you know, to the other part of what I would say, if I may quickly,
sure.
Public engagement is the answer. This, you know, this is heavy lifting to change the country, to put forward ideas that will inspire people to support you and to support the organization you believe in. And so, to the extent that you don't see what you think the country needs right now, step up, engage. 2 years ago, I did a piece for the Nassau Guardian in the Independent Supplement, and I made the point that, you know, the answers to the question of where this leadership will come from comes when you look in the mirror. You've got to make a determination that you are going to be a part of the process. Facebook posts and tweets and occasional letter is not going to be enough right now. You've got to step up, step in, and you know, be that change that you think needs to take place.
There's an interesting school of thought that the current administration, the current government, the Progressive Liberal Party, led by Prime Minister Christie, sees an opportunity, and I obviously am posing this for your thoughts, your comment on that, sees an opportunity to not begin in earnest a campaign until the last minute, weeks out of an election, because the opposition is asleep. Whether that's true or not, that's not my thought. But I put it to you, is there any truth in your mind to that school of thought? Because traditionally in our country, you'd have had a campaign 6-8 months ago that would have started in earnest. We've never had 3 months before an election, not a major rally held.
Yeah, your question is a bit complex, and I answer it in this way. An opposition that is asleep is an advantage to the government to have an early election, because they're not ready, they're not prepared. The Prime Minister, in my opinion, is delaying calling the election because he's not ready, and because the level of dissatisfaction in the country is such that if he goes, he's likely to lose. And so it's not that the opposition is asleep, this is the reason why he's not doing it. The other part of it is that an opposition ought to be active, holding the government's feet to the fire and demonstrating itself to be the easy alternative. I know from when I was in the Senate from 97 to 2002, it seemed almost as if the opposition never stopped campaigning. And so 12, 18 months out from the day the election was called, the PLP was out campaigning and raising cane and making the government's life a bit miserable.
Which is an opposition's job.
Which is what they should do. And, I remember internally having a lot of debates with colleagues around the table with Mr. Ingram reminding, look, we still have the business of governing. The opposition can campaign, but we still have to govern.
So an opposition job is easy, generally speaking, compared to the government.
And if it does its job well, if it presents itself as a viable alternative, people will be excited, and their supporters will register, and they will not be able to wait to get rid of the current government. And so that, I think, is a part of the problem.
Do you share the view that some, and I'll let it be nameless for now, even though it's public knowledge, from the now University of the Bahamas, there are some professionals, some in academia who say are actively involved in encouraging Bahamians to spoil their ballots. Weigh in on that, because it is getting traction. There are people in our country who believe that's the way to go. What's your thoughts?
I call Dr. Strawn's name, Dr. Bethel. They represent that disenchanted, discontented grouping that I referred to earlier. At least that swath of Bahamians who are just really upset. And so I can identify the genesis of their movement. Unfortunately, I am of the school of thought that says democracy is messy, smelly business, and at some point it has to translate into a choice. You may not always like the choices, but you have to and ought to, in my opinion, make a choice. Even if that means finding some name to go on that ballot. You don't need a bunch of people in order to become a candidate. Even if that means finding some obscure, unknown, unnamed person to go on that ballot so that people will have a choice. I believe elections are about choices, and so I don't support the movement to that degree. I think come election day, you have to choose. And if you don't see anything that is palatable to you, then you ought to take your movement to the next step of finding someone or someones who are prepared to go on the ballot and give people a choice. To the opposition's failing, and that's all of them, the reason you have so many fractured voices is because they've been putting personal agendas ahead of the national good, to the extent that this is the time for opposition forces to unify. They're not prepared to do so, and I fear that they will suffer a consequence that they will not be pleased about.
Well said. what advice do you have for the country, not about choosing a political party, but advice as to that would serve to encourage our people? You've done well in sharing your thoughts, but what additional advice do you have in encouraging our people, maybe a point or two of what is really a critical decision that they need to consider, a weigh, factors that they need to weigh in choosing who they vote for, whether it's a political party or an individual?
I am seeing positive signs of the kind of public engagement that we need. It's easy to say, but it is necessary to say that the demonstrations, the marches are a good start. You've got to take it to the next level. I believe that the best government is from the bottom up, not the top down. I do not believe that a Freedom of Information Act or a Government Accountability Act is going to be the pivotal thing that transforms the country. But what we ought to then do is to say that we are going to engage and support some specific person on a ballot. But here's what I believe ought to happen. I am prepared to support you if I see you make a commitment to deliver this. It is investments in education. It is transformation of our social service regime so that our young people don't continue to live in poverty, to get the worst, to be ill-prepared for education when they get to school and so on. We're going to be prepared to invest in crime fighting and community development in specific and meaningful ways. It is that level of engagement that I think is positive, so that the person that you vote for gives you their commitment that this is what I stand for. That is the level of engagement that is proactive and I think can be very effective in going forward, if you're not prepared to do it yourself. Making a determination to run, putting your name on the ballot is always a great place to start. But if you're not prepared to go to that degree, then be more active in setting an agenda for the person for whom you're going to vote.
And my last point to you would be, or question, I happen to know you're a man with strong family values, and know your lovely wife and your kids. You are a family man. I don't have to ask you that. But what, as a voter, how significant is it for voters to look for people that may or may necessarily, in other words, does having strong family values or not play a role in choosing? I mean, is it really that significant in choosing your candidate? Voting for a single woman or a single man or whatever, does that really factor in voters making up their mind? Do you think that should factor in, I should say?
The short answer is yes, it should factor in. Doesn't necessarily have to be the decision-making variable, but it should factor in because it is instructive in some ways. No, you don't have to be a Christian. No, you don't have to be married. No, you don't have to have a family to be an effective member of Parliament. But if the issues that we're dealing with as a country are such that the way in which you have lived your life, the way in which you conduct yourself and your affairs give me an indication of the kind of leader you will be, then it will be factored in. So, for example, at a time when, by so many measures, this country's level of corruption is out of whack, and the way in which you have conducted yourself has been such that you seem to exude under-the-table deals and unwillingness to declare, an inability to talk about your business interests or to know the difference between a conflict of interest and not, then that says to me that I might not be able to take you seriously. And so for the deciders, the people who are deciding, you don't have to be concerned about whether someone is single or not, because we've had a lot of good, effective people who are single, but it is how they've lived their lives, and nowadays you get to find that out, and I think people should engage at that level.
Absolutely. Want to thank you very much for coming and sharing your thoughts with our viewers. I think it's very instructive. And so thanks for coming, and we'll love to have you back
Thank you very
in the
much.
near future. On behalf of us here at Nation Building, want to thank you this week for watching us, and want you to always stay tuned, of course, as we bring you very educational and informative programs.